Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio. We're your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show. Definitely a great show we're going to have today. Just a topic that's probably going to be interesting to a lot of people. It is a topic that we'll talk about music, but we're going to talk about a very unique type of music, classical music. And with me today, I have someone who actually composes classic music and teaches classical music. And we're going to talk about the differences in the music and how it works in this whole world, which, by the way, on our radio at night, we actually have classic music playing. So it's literally like, just to keep, nice and calm, so the radio does play that as part of our programming. So without any further ado, I have with me Tina Davidson. Tina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, my pleasure. My pleasure. As I was talking to you a little earlier, I've had different types of, guests in the world of music, pianists. I've had singers, I've had rappers. And today we're going to talk about really classical music. I mean, as classical as it gets, right? I mean, we're talking the heavy stuff. We're talking the old, composing music. I mean, maybe Beethoven type of stuff, right? Maybe not. Maybe I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about here. But
well, so let me just introduce classical contemporary music, is what we call it. Okay. It comes out of a tradition of classical music, but it is sort of like the Beethoven of today. So if Beethoven of today were writing music, he would call himself a contemporary classical composer. So it's out of the tradition, but it's modern. It's not always melodic. It can be kind of dissonant, and it can be actually a lot more like jazz, more like improvisational jazz. It can be a lot of different things. But I am one of the composers who, I don't know, I've just been writing music for the last 45 years. And this year, I also published a book about being a composer and some of the other things that happened to me in my life called Let Your Heart Be Broken, Life in Music from a Classical Composer.
All right. Well, so we're going to talk about the book, definitely. And we want people to actually, reach out and find out about the book and maybe get the book and learn from the book. But you say it's interesting because your story, in the 90s, you apparently had a serious condition that you had to deal with. And not only you had to deal with, there was very little expertise to solve that condition. So let's talk about that story, if you don't mind.
Oh, now I've had quite a few stories. So now, which story are you talking about?
The congestive heart failure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was 29 and I went to the dentist and had my teeth cleaned. And I was writing a piano concerto at that time. And I was actually rehearsing it and performing it with the orchestra. And I was getting really tired. And I thought, maybe I have a virus. So it was kind of cool because I didn't have any energy to be nervous because I was actually sick. And so I played the concert. I played my piano concerto. And when I got home, I said to my partner, I said, I can't get out of the car. I'm too exhausted. And it turned out I had a bacterial infection that I got through the dentist that entered my bloodstream and actually ate a couple holes in the leaflets of my valve. So then I had congestive heart failure for about 9 years. So I stopped performing, and I really had to sort of say, what do I want to do the most in life? And that was writing music. So I gave up all my jobs. I gave up doing concerts, and I just concentrated on writing music. And I did really pretty well for about 9 years. But then I got so sick that I had to have open heart surgery. And at that point, they were doing a brand new surgery that only 2 people in the United States could do. One of them was in Cleveland Institute. And what they did is they, instead of cutting the valve out and replacing it, which would have mean that I'd have to be on all sorts of medication, they just cut the holes out and they stitched them closed. And so after 9 years of being sick and writing music and being very focused about that, I suddenly was well. And that was quite an experience, to be suddenly well and to be able to run and walk and do all those things that I hadn't been able to do. And that in my music, that was reflected on quite a few pieces that I wrote, which were sort of in gratitude for healing. So I was writing a lot of string quartets at that point. So
well, thank you, Tina, for sharing that part of it. And by the way, that's a pretty interesting concept, that you literally understood the actual surgery process, and you were smiling as you were describing it, which indicates that it was unique, and it is still unique the way they did it. It's very progressive, very,
at that point, yes, it was very. Now it's pretty commonplace. I'm saying, but this was in years ago. Yeah, now it's sort of like ho hum.
Yeah, it's like daily stuff, right? But again, I mean, but you were young. You had this whole event, and by the way, that I don't know what you did with that dentist, knowing that was the stuff. Was there anything that actually, I mean, was there any ramification? Did you guys talk to this?
No, because
you couldn't prove it.
You couldn't prove it. It wasn't, he was just doing routine. He wasn't doing anything bad.
Just well, yeah, but they sterilize and stuff, and stuff. And again, it's hygiene, and in dental office. I mean, it's pretty.
Yeah, I decided at that point that my focus was really on dealing with my illness, learning how to live with it, and writing music. And I was very dedicated at that point. I was writing 4 or 5 hours every day. And I had a little one. So I was very focused on just paring back my life to the essentials, and doing what I could. It did mean that I couldn't exercise. I couldn't eat rich foods. I couldn't drink. I had to be on the couch at 7:00 every night. But it was interesting because I had pared my life down. The illness actually made decisions for me. So I didn't have to think about, should I go to a party? I just couldn't go to a party. And it was kind of I think it's one thing we don't talk about is when somebody gets better, really better, is cured. How do you figure out your life at that point? How do you start taking on a different kind of responsibility for yourself and making good choices? Before, I couldn't make bad choices because I wouldn't have been able to, get up the next morning. So it was a very interesting time for me to figure out how I would move through that. Because, illness is a great teacher, but you are not your illness. And you also I had to let my illness go and learn to trust, and to be energetic and active again. So it was an interesting time.
Well, it is. And for our audiences, I mean, we are going to connect the discussion today between music and the health and all the stuff. And you have other stuff that we're going to talk about. But you're right. I mean, illness is a super teacher, if you want to call it that way, because only when you have to face something of that magnitude, that's when you start learning other things and appreciating certain things in life. And again, to your point, it was guiding you at the time. And then eventually when you got better, now you had to make some real choices on how to proceed in life and really move on from, that whole element where you were completely not in charge. But I do hear in your story that you adapted to a degree to it because you had to adjust because your health obviously is important to you, and you took whatever. By the way, you said it's a long time. I mean, of recovery here, and during the years that you mentioned, you were able to actually change to do certain things, and you kept it within. I mean, obviously, you gave up things such as doing the orchestras and all the stuff, but you did the writing part. You could not do additional work.
I think that in a funny way, the illness made me the composer I am today, because since it was my one focus, I just, it's sort of like closing down a window till you just have a very narrow place that you're looking through. And that was my concentration and my focus. It also helped me in my personal life to realize there were things, emotional things in my life that I didn't want to be dragging myself through. So the book is called Let Your Heart Be Broken. And that is a sort of a metaphor for everybody has a broken heart. Everybody suffers and is in pain. And you can resist it. You can push it away. You can pretend it's not there. Or you can allow it to be in your life with the understanding that it will, as you grieve or deal with it and allow it into your life, which is a gentle thing. It's not like I'm going to take a hammer and hit it. It has less and less power over you. And by allowing your heart to be broken, you find that you actually have the energy and the wherewithal to create something new. So I think in terms of my music, that was a really significant time in my life, those 9 years, to let go of a lot of old stuff. And wow, then when the doors opened and I was healed, I was a Lazarus. You have some guilt, have some trust issues. It was very unexpected. I didn't expect to be healed like that. But it really made me want more and more joy in my life, and to have my music express that joy.
Well, listening to you, I think it's a lesson to all of us watching and listening right now, viewers and audiences, and myself, you have a mindset about it. You have a positive outlook on things. And I think that's a powerful piece, because I think there's only two ways in this life. We can look at things as doomsday, it's over, or we can look at things as like, it's all right, it is what it is. Let me adapt. Let me make the best of it and do something with it, while I'm still here and while I have the energy. Your attitude about it is completely, it is what it is. I'm going to do some adjustments. It is my health. I'm going to go through it. But then you look now and you say, like, those were the years that made you the composer you are today, because you're right. You had the time to focus on your writing. And
I had
really
the time, no distractions.
Exactly. You don't have to do anything else. You spend your 4 hours, 5 hours a day putting music in play. So again, this is your case. You're a composer. If you were, maybe I don't know, something different in terms of your profession, you probably would have done the same in this case and focus on maybe writing a book about, different things, whatever the case. But the concept about your positivity is contagious, and we want people to have that, because life is, to your point, life is happening, and we all get sick, and people are going through different things in their life. And if it happens, as you said, let your heart be broken. It means accept the situation and adapt, and that's a powerful message, because a lot of us resist. Why it's happening to me? Oh my God. Why me? Life sucks. And then we can blame every single reason why it's happening. And even if you did, you're not changing anything. It is what it is. At that time, the only thing you can do is adapt, move, work with it, and see what you can come up with. You did great.
And go through it. It's not like if the fire is in front of you and your life is on the other side, you're going to have to figure a way of going through that fire. And it's going to be messy and unpleasant. But there are good people to help, whatever you need. You have family, you have friends, And if your friends are not helpful, I always say, find new friends. People say to me, what if people discourage me from being creative? I said, oh, find new friends. I'm just like, don't be with the people who are saying no to you.
I love
And
it.
which brings me to something else that I'm really very serious about. Now, I've been playing music since I was 5. I've been writing music since I was for 45 years, and now I'm an author. I really believe that creativity is an innate gift to all of us. So we have 2 hands, we have 2 feet, we have creativity. Some people have more, or some have it in certain directions, but we all have it. It's a gift. And so when somebody says to you, oh, don't sing, you have a terrible voice, find new people to be with. Be with people who support your creativity. I've done a lot of teaching in Philadelphia public schools. I go in and I teach kids who have had no musical background how to write music. So we build instruments from recycled materials. And I always find that when my kids have built their own instrument, they have to write music. Well, actually, they're mine. I could probably tell them to do anything. They will do anything for me. They've built this wonderful instrument. We write music. We don't write it through classical notation. We write it through graphic notation. They draw the sound. Then we do it through invented notation, where they start creating their own alphabet of sound. And all I want them to know is you are creative, and that is your gift, and you take it with you. No one can take that from you. And I think sometimes we think only special people are creative. And it's my field, and I would say, no, we're all creative. It depends how we use it, where it is, and if we believe in it. And some people nurture it, some people don't, so, but that would be my message to the listener, is to believe in your own creative powers. I mean, even if you're going through a divorce and you get through it and you build a new life, that's being creative. That is the essence of creativity. So anyway, I will finish. I will stop my lecture.
No. It's powerful stuff. I mean, and you break it down in a very simplified way, but really it is the core of things. And there are 2 elements that I just want to highlight here. One is the ability to see you for who you are and believe in yourself. And if you think that people around you are not really there to support whatever it is. And it's funny because someone says, well, you can't sing for nothing. Well, so I can get the concept of constructive criticism, whatever, and maybe someone that's close to you can tell you the reality or the truth that may hurt. But maybe in their eyes, they don't have an actual way of thinking about your voice. Now, voice is voice. You can use it. I have a hoarse voice, and I've never explored singing. I think I will suck at it. But frankly, that's that part that you don't know. You don't know what you're capable of unless you put it out there. And if someone is going to support, here's the worst case that, the best case would be like, hey, listen, I don't know, but you know what? Let's try. Let's see what you can give. Right. That would be a positive way to do it. But when someone gives you that, you're the naysayers, right? Like, you can't do this. You're never going to do this. Who the hell you think you are? Other people try, and they give you every single reason why you would fail or why you cannot even start. And you're right. This is a decision making, that most of the people sometimes have a challenge with, because it's coming from your immediate entourage typically.
Right.
And it could be family members, it could be close friends. You talked about divorce. It could be your spouse. It could be other, people that don't believe in you. But the best message to everyone that they can get is believe in yourself, no matter what people say. If you think you got something, explore it. The worst case is you're going to go to the end, you're going to discover it, and not me, you move on. You try the next best thing. Again, you don't know until you try. And so don't let people tell you off and tell you, to turn off your, I guess, ambition, right? And that's a big part of it.
And right. And I think when I started writing music and I was graduating from college, I was like going, oh, people say, oh, as a musician, you'll never make any money. It's a dead end. And I thought, should I do this, or maybe I should go back and get a graduate degree and just teach? And I thought, the worst thing in my life would be to get to the end of my life and be bitter about a choice I didn't make.
Bingo.
And I thought, and I saw it in my mother. My mother was very smart. She was actually a college professor, but she really wanted to be a writer. And she was my mom lived and lived and lived and lived. She lived till 99. So I think she was kind of disappointed with herself until she was about 70. And then she's kind of forgot about that. But I didn't want to be bitter. I would rather fail than to be bitter. So
there's no failure. You would have probably just found another way to do it differently, or maybe do something else. But,
right.
or to me, you don't fail. You just learn something new, or,
yes.
How not to do certain things,
Right.
So as long as, again, it's all about mindset, how you look at it. But you talked about, you don't want to be bitter about things. And, people at that early age are telling you, what do you think? You're not going to make money. That's typically because that's how people are. In general, people would not see your vision. They just see it from their own lens. And their lens, they're not seeing what you actually are thinking about, your grandiose, moment, right? They're not seeing that. They're just seeing that I know you, but, I don't think you can do this. No, you don't know me. That's the point. No one knows us better than us. Sometimes we don't even know ourselves well. I mean, you discover things about yourself that you never knew. As the year go by, you can become more of who you are, right? And you can, right. I mean, there's so much that we actually are capable of. You talked about the creativity and really just, doing things that, like the comment you said about your mom's almost regret. Believe it or not, the most common thing that I had a show, we talked about like some, I guess, unalive decisions, or like regrets, or like moments where people are literally have in common. They all have the regrets of things that they wanted to do, but never got to do them. And, and by the way, this can happen to anyone. It doesn't mean that you age or you don't age, because we don't know where we go, right? But the fact is, if you want to do something, don't let anybody stop you from doing it. As long as it's legal, of course. Now, if it's illegal, I would say, no, don't do that. Please don't. But the idea, if you have ambition, if you have an idea, if you have anything, pursue it. If you feel that this is my legacy road, this is where I see my calling, guess what? Discover. You want to travel the world. No one can stop you. Figure out a way to do it. You can do it free. You can get people to take you places, right?
Right. And I think you need to be willing to accept that, okay, if I am a composer, it probably doesn't mean that I'll be able to afford a BMW, or maybe I won't be able to buy the mansion on the hill. So you're making adjustments. It's not, what is the most important thing to you that you want? And then be willing to not have some of the other trappings. And if you want the BMW or the house on the hill, then that's where you should be going. That's what you should be doing.
Well, I think that even that will come on based on your expertise. The more you are good at what you do, the more you're going to highlight yourself, the more you're going to be, pretty much attracted to all that stuff. That could happen too. You don't know. That's the thing. I mean,
I don't know.
Every person that has reached stardom that we know of in the world, historically or today, they've had a moment of their life where someone or some people in their lives didn't believe in them, but they didn't listen to them. They did what they felt was righteous for them, and they continued. Was it easy? Probably not. Was it difficult? Definitely yes. Did they have to jump hoops and loops and do all that good stuff and to get whatever they did? They did. And did they have to sacrifice things? Pretty much a lot of people do.
Oh, yes. You especially if you really want to be good at what you want to do. It takes, what they say about becoming a virtuoso performer or dancer is that you have to do 10,000 hours of practice before you get to be 21 or 24. And I think it's 21. I had done it by the time I was 24. But that means, in college, I was spending up to 4 hours a day just practicing the piano. Now, I happen to love it, so it didn't feel like a sacrifice. And it is true that I wasn't as social as other people, but that kind of worked for me. So, but
okay.
you're going to have to put in the work. There's no question when you look at all the wonderful singers and in pop or in jazz or in any field, they have put in the work. I think the Beatles, they calculated how many hours they practiced together before they made it big. And it was a huge amount of, they did a huge amount of not only practicing, but gigs, gigs and dives and bars, where nobody was listening. But that was that was practicing. So they really did the work.
Again, Jenna, you're talking about the main powerful things. You gotta believe, and you don't stop, and you do whatever it takes. And whatever that means in terms of time, in terms of putting the effort, you're gonna have to. There was no free ride here. I mean, I talked about going around the world.
There's no free ride. There isn't. No matter, what, Beyonce, it doesn't really matter who you're talking about. They have done the work. They have
been disappointed.
Yeah. They have really hung in there and practiced and refined and performed and did it again and again. And I think sometimes we think of these stars as being kind of magical, but they're down and dirty with doing the hard work. I happen to say that as a classical composer, I know some classical composers don't think of singer-songwriters as high music. I think it's all good. I think it's all amazing, all wonderful. And I've been in administrative positions, especially when I was living in Philadelphia, where I had a Philadelphia Composers League, and that was as for all composers. For jazz, it was for singer-songwriters, it was for experimentalists, improvisers, people who were doing things, all sorts of things. And I really believe that all the genres, if they were to come together, they would all make themselves more powerful in terms of they're all voices of our time. Music is really speaking of what we are going through. And that's very exciting.
It is a means of expression, right? I mean, and depending what style, everybody's got a different, spin on things. I mean, whether, it's funny because the month before, I think we had, actually last month, we did have a few shows about hip hop because it's the 50th year anniversary of hip hop. And we had some old school, real, people that actually were out there and made history in that genre of music. And, again, it was what it was. It was an expression mode. And that was the type of music that could reflect that messaging to the world, and so to your point, I mean, whether it's classical, whether it's modern, jazz, you name it, it's got its own generation, if you want to call it. It has got its own flavor. It's got its own, I guess, reason behind it. And whatever it is. And historically, that's the same thing. I mean, classic music was had a history, has a reason behind it, right? Now you actually have performed at the Philadelphia Orchestra. You were, that was your digs, right? That's your main.
Well, I had a piece performed by them. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
There you go. And then you have the American Composers Orchestra, Sample Chamber Orchestra. I mean, you've been around quite a bit of places, and you've built some nice music out there.
And I have quite a few recordings out. There is a wonderful violinist. Her name is Hilary Hahn, and she was one of these, genius violinists. But she commissioned a piece, and she recorded it on Deutsche Grammophon. And actually, she recorded it 2 times. She recorded in 2013, and then she recorded again in 2018. So I have recording on Albany Records, New World Records. So, yeah.
Well, so I have a question for you. Now, you said you started music since you were 5. That's an early age, and so you did have some I guess some support. You mentioned your mom. I mean, they had to possibly support your idea, or at least your ambition at that point, because you could have possibly started the music at 5 without maybe instruments and things that they supported, themselves. But then you kept that. You found yourself into it, right? Now, there is a story about you. I don't know if we can talk about it or not, but a story about parents,
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay, so I wasn't sure. I was trying to play around that one, but
It's a little bit of a cliffhanger in my book, but I think if people hear it, they'll go, "Oh, I've got to read that book." So I was born in Sweden, and I was in a foster home for 3.5 years. I was living in the south of Sweden in Malmö with a Swedish family. And I had 3 older brothers, one of whom was almost my age. So we were brought up as twins. And then one day, this American woman came and adopted me, brought me to America. She married my stepfather, and then I was the oldest of 5. And I knew that I was adopted. It wasn't something we spoke about at all. In fact, if I said something to my mother, she would kind of get really tense. And you know how kids have this intuition about things that they shouldn't talk about? I just kind of look at her and go, oh, I'm not going to talk about that. So when I was in college, I got a job with a family friend, a family actually that I had lived with in high school, to go to this school in Philadelphia. And they wanted me to take their younger daughter to Sweden for a year. So I went back to Sweden, actually for just the summer. I went back to Sweden, and the last week I thought, well, maybe I'll go to the adoption agency. So I called them up, and I always thought I was Swedish. Maybe I had very dark hair at that point, and Swedes are very blonde. So they said, come on down. We have some information. And she was sitting there in the office, and she asked me some questions about my family, and then read me this letter. And it turned out that my adopted mother was my biological mother, but she had not told me. So, it was one of those moments when you realize that you have built your whole life on a perception. Being adopted is very powerful. It wasn't that I wasn't loved or that anybody distinguished me as different than any of the other kids, but I felt different. And I felt like they'd talk about all the relatives, and I'd think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to know who my real relatives were? Mm. So at 21, to realize I wasn't that person. I was actually really my mother's biological child. And then to think, why had she never told me? So that was a very hard start for my 20s. That was, I had a lot of anger about it. I think my mother was very smart. I was an illegitimate child. She was not married to my father. And she had me in Sweden in the 50s, where they were much kinder to women who didn't have husbands. And she left me there. I don't know if she really was sure she wanted to bring me back, but when I was 3.5, she decided she would. And she adopted me, and that kind of protected me. It protected her. And what I have learned is there is a big difference between your privacy, which is you're entitled to have privacy, and a secret. And secrets hurt other people, especially if it's a secret about somebody else. So my mother did the right thing, but then she kept holding on to this, and it became a secret. And then she thought she'd lose her job, or she thought people wouldn't think well of her, so to me, that's really important, that I am entitled to have privacy, but if I have a secret that involves someone else, I have to think carefully about keeping that a secret and if it hurts other people. And that did hurt me. And it hurt our whole family. It was quite a surprise to everybody. And again, I think I have to say, bringing it back to music, I think that music became this world that I could be in, that protected me, that was safe. I could just sink down into the music. And it was like I was underwater and I was breathing the water and I was totally at home with it. And I suffered a lot with depression as a child and as a young adult, really pretty deep depressions. And when my daughter was born, I had to decide if I was going to bite the bullet. I either had to do some therapy and really work at this, or I was going to hand my daughter all my problems the way that my mother handed me her problems. And so I did a lot of therapy and a lot of yoga and a lot of running and a lot of taking baths and, just a body work, just anything that would make me healthy and get me to a place where I wasn't carrying this anger and rage around. So yeah, that's what I did. That was the fire, And I think, also that as parents, we have to understand if we don't take care of our business, we are just handing it off to our children. And even though they might not know what our business is, they'll feel there's an effect. Maybe we don't share, or maybe we find it hard to put our arms around them, or maybe we get really angry unexpectedly because we're triggered, or I don't know.
I'm listening to you right now. It's an amazing story, actually. The turn of events just on their own. I mean, it's a movie thing. I mean, really, it could be a nice little
movies are real life. I mean, really weird things happen in life.
I'm saying, but your story could be a real movie plot. I mean, just think about it. Like, you knew you were adopted only to find out you were not adopted, and she was your. And by the way, I've had a similar story before, so this is not. It is.
Yes, it's not unusual.
Yeah, it's happening.
Intellectually, I understand what my mother did. Emotionally,
Tough.
It was very, very hard.
Because
and my mother was a bright, smart, lovely. She was a wonderful human being, but there was this secret.
The culture didn't allow for it then. Right? Culturally, that was the reason I think she was forced to do this, because of just the stigma behind it.
We understand that. And that she couldn't have said to me, listen, honey, you're 13 now, and this is not something we can share with other people right now, but I wanted to tell you I'm your real mother, and I love you, and I call you by name. I call you my daughter. I bring you in so you know that. We can't talk about it because of the way society is, with friends, but you can always talk to me. You're going to be angry. You're going to be happy. You're going to be sad. Come to me. I am here.
Any resentment?
For me? Oh, my goodness. It took me many, many years, an active practice of forgiveness. Let me tell you my practice of forgiveness. It's in the book.
Yeah. Listen, people need to know that, because I think we all need some of it.
So this, at one point, I had this dream that I was down in the basement, and I'm dragging something across the floor of the basement, and the rope is cutting into my shoulder. And I look back and I realize it's a body. And I woke up and I said, oh my God, I am dragging my parents around. I have to get out of the basement. This is crazy. So I decided I was going to forgive everybody. And I had this pit bull, and we were walking the streets of Philadelphia, and she was pretty aggressive and would pull. And I started every morning for a year. All I had to say was, I forgive you. I did not have to mean it. I absolutely didn't have to mean it, but I would say, okay, so I forgave myself first. I forgive you, Tina. Then I forgive my daughter. Then I forgive my husband. Then I forgive my brothers and sisters. After about 20 minutes of walking, I was at my mother and my stepfather. I was walking the streets of Philadelphia, and I was saying, I forgive you, you horrible, expletive. You can imagine what the neighbors thought, like, oh my God, here comes that crazy woman. And I did it for a year. And what I noticed is I could be in the room with my stepfather without feeling like I had to leave. Then at Christmas, my mother gave me a gift and I was able to say, thank you. I was, it didn't restore love, but it brought me to kindness. I was able to be kind to them. And that was such a gift to me, to be with them and not be angry and resentful. It didn't make us the best friends in the world. It didn't bring out back all those things that I lost. But I could be a decent, kind person to them. When my mother got older, I wasn't taking care of her all that much, but I could come up on weekends. She had late onset Alzheimer's. So she would say, now, who are you? And I'd say, oh, I'm one of your daughters. But I could be kind about it. And that was such a gift to me. So I think forgiveness has nothing to do with them. It has to do with lightening my load, getting through my anger, and just being a decent person, just being relaxed with other people instead of like this sort of tense. I love that I said, I forgive you, but I didn't have to mean it. I love that I gave myself that permission. But I think saying it over and over again, I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you when you were so difficult. I forgive you when you screamed to me. I forgive you when you hit me. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but it worked for me.
That's my question. I mean, you've pretty much challenged yourself to fix yourself in a way, right? And all your emotions, all stuff, without using any outside help. I mean, a lot of people would probably, have some sort of a psychotherapy.
No, I did have therapy.
Oh, okay. So
I did have therapy, but I always believe that you have to do, it's not just therapy or just medication.
You got to do your part.
It's so much else. It's healthy eating, good sleeping, taking baths, lighting candles, going on date nights, treating yourself well, doing yoga, doing exercise, getting out for beautiful walks. And especially, I've always been so goal driven. I serve my music. And I have to be in the best emotional, physical shape to write music, and then I'll do whatever. And to be the best parent I can be. So those two things, whatever it is, I'll do the work. And so, not fun work.
You enjoy what you do, though.
I'm very focused on it. Yes, it gives me a huge pleasure.
That's power.
Yes.
Understand, loving what you do,
yes.
Living to do what you love.
Yes.
It's just a unique thing. Not everybody gets to do that, unfortunately. Well, we don't do it because we don't select to do it. I think we do it because we follow the motions, and whatever is thrown at us, we just take. And if you want to be happy, and real success is really if you're happy. The rest, I mean, the money comes on everything, but if you're not happy, there's no success there.
Right? Who cares about the money if you're not happy?
Yeah, listen, success is a lot of things, and we always measure it by how much money do you have, how much property you've earned, or how much is in your bank. But really, it's everything. It's the family values. It's the ability to actually get up in the morning and have your health and wealth and sanity, and be able to do what you love, without having to have any regrets on every day, right? You're just happy to do your thing, right? And I think that's a powerful piece, and you do that every day. Now, I did ask the question earlier about the support in terms of the music from your family, and of course we went and talked about the story, which is an interesting story of your mom and your childhood and everything. Now, did they have anything to do with your music?
Oh, my mother was a college professor. She was an avid violinist. She loved playing the violin. She loved playing an orchestra.
It wasn't a DNA.
She just loved it. Well, it's interesting. My paternal, so my father's mother, I have her piano. My father actually is a scientist, a well-known scientist. He's quite a jazz, he played jazz in the 20s and 30s. That's what he liked to play. So he was quite a good pianist. And my my foster mother, my dear Swedish mother, she played the harmonica. So I felt like and there were a lot of people wanting to do music that really hadn't done music as a profession. And I was kind of that person that went on and did it.
You were the one that fulfilled their dream.
I think so. It's sort of like, yeah.
Listen, yeah. But that's, there's always something. I mean, there's a drive, whether, to your point, it's the fact that you were surrounded by it, the fact that it's in the family gene somehow, it all kind of had to do it. And maybe we can't prove it, but it sounds like the circumstances, the environment that you had was almost leading and talking to you. This is your calling. And you did.
So. Yeah. And I do want to say about my mom, she was an amazing storyteller. She really wanted to educate her children. She was always taking us to different things, giving us different opportunities. So, there was just kind of this one thing.
Listen, it's not a small thing, but
yeah.
Listen, I mean, listening to the story, I get it. I get her, why she did it, but you're right. She could have, that's the part, again, for people watching and listening, there's the fear of, if I tell you, maybe you react, right? But if I don't tell you, you're going to react regardless. Probably it will be worse because it will be longer. And then that resentment, is going to be harder, maybe hate will even develop and things like that. As opposed to if I did it early on and just prepped you, or at least gave you the right reasons behind it. And at an earlier stage, you probably wouldn't have felt the same way. But long time.
I think that anytime you're intimate, it takes courage. Courage because you might be rejected. And that's part of the creative process as well. When you are performing a piece or composing a piece or, whatever you're doing, you're taking you and you're putting it out for other people. And they may love it or they may not like it. So, but you can't connect with them if you don't have the courage to do it. So I think that's something that is a music lesson, but it's also a life lesson that to create intimacy and bonds between people, you have to be courageous enough to open your mouth or to sing or to play or to tell the story, or because that's what then creates the connection between us all, is that willingness to share. So it's really about sharing.
Well, again, it's you have to have the courage, right, to break that, especially when you've done something and you're hiding, again, secrets, right? It's hard, like, to come in and say, listen, I want to tell you this. Most of us, are probably going to be hesitant, because we don't know your reaction, right? We try to figure out the reaction, but at the end of the day, you got to face the music, and literally,
you got to face the music. That's right.
Face the music sometimes, so might as well get it done, right?
Yes.
But so let's talk music, literally. Like, why classical music or classical contemporary versus any type of music? I mean, isn't music the same? I mean, the basics of, again, let me rephrase that. The basics language of music is the same. I'm ignorant about music, so you can school me all you want right now, because that's important for me too. But I understand that, the melodies, or at least not the melodies, but the actual notes, right? They're the same,
right.
Do, re, fa, do, sol, so those ones, right? Everybody uses the same, it's like the same alphabet, just different, thousands and thousands and millions of words, right? Same concept. You can have different ways to do it. Why not jazz? Why not any other type of music? Why specifically classical music?
I think that's a wonderful question. I think for me, it's what I grew up with. I grew up with classical music, so it was the language, the musical language in the house. I think that when you're in jazz, it's really the language usually that you grow up with, or you feel it's kind of street, it's kind of out there. Also, jazz has got, a wonderful ability to improvise. And that's such a wonderful metaphor for people to feel like, I've got this stuff, but then I have to make it up on the spot. Classical music is much more a written form, like literature, which is more written. It's so I think what I love about it is that, my music doesn't sound like Beethoven at all. I do a lot of stuff with rhythm that you might think is maybe even a little bit more comes from Arabic music, or and I lived in Turkey for 3 years, so I think it kind of seeped up in there. But I love to do a lot of things with rhythm. I also am really interested in energy. Like, if you've got this pattern that's growing and growing and you're getting more and more energetic, what happens when you run out of energy? Like, if you're running a race and you run and you run and you run and you run, and you know what they say, that you hit the wall, and then I always think that you hit that wall and then your heart goes up to God. Just so in terms of music, what would that be like when you've exhausted your physical energy? It's just all gone, and you hit that wall. I don't know. I feel like you just go whoosh up into the sky. And maybe the energy turns into more of a swirling melody or something like that. So I think classical music has a lot to do with the architecture of sound. It's usually the pieces are longer. Jazz can be pretty long, but certainly longer than a singer-songwriter song, which is usually between 3 and 6 minutes, or sometimes longer.
Classic music can be for a long time.
Classical music can go on for really a long time.
You can
listen to Mahler. When I was a child, it was like I'd hear that it was a piece by Mahler, and I'd go like, "Oh no, it's forever."
Oh, listen, you have to appreciate it. I mean, if, for example, if you love movies. Movies, what makes the movie more attractive is the sound and the music. That is, I mean, look at we go contemporary, like Star Wars, right?
Right.
The Imperial March, right? It's like a signature, a piece. It is not a small piece; it's a big piece. Again, I don't know. I mean, you probably the judge.
Right.
You'll be a better judge than me, but it is a traditional, piece. Everybody kind of tunes out to it. It's even been remixed into some modern stuff, but it is, almost like something unique. But you can't appreciate Star Wars without it. You can't appreciate Superman without the composition and the music behind it. So it gives a life to anything. I mean, I do podcasts and shows and stuff, and I have to throw in music when even our clip here is going to have some music behind it. So I'm going to use one of yours.
Oh, yay.
But because it gives it a little bit of spice, it makes it alive, right? So the music in its own is alive, right? Now, for me, I'm just a normal person. I'm not big, I mean, I understand the difference in music, but when I look at music notes, and I can flip on the whole book, I would not even understand what the hell, how is it going to work? What does that mean? Now, when I work, like, I've seen some, I guess, orchestras playing live. They all have the notes in front of them. They have the maestro working, the magic and all the stuff. But like, the notes are the same. How do, for example, the drummers and the violinist and the cello, the pianists and all these different instruments operate based on, is it a cue? I mean, I have no idea. Can you guide us through that process? Because I mean, to me, It's like they all sound the same, they all look the same, but what drives one versus the other?
Right. So when you create I've written a lot for orchestra. So let's say you have just a melody. You have woodwinds, you have brass, you have strings, you have percussion, and it's called orchestration, where you take that melody and the accompaniment, whatever that is. Usually it's 2-part or even 3-part or even 4-part, and you score it so that maybe the flutes are playing along with the violins. And then the brass has this little thing in between. It's kind of like, let's say you're used to painting with, a kid's palette, which has like 6 or 8 colors in it. And then you go and you take an artist's palette, which has 24 colors. So like there are 10 different greens, and suddenly you're starting to look at between the colors. Like there's green, but then there's light green, then there's olive, and then there's, I don't know what that is. So that's what orchestration is. It's about creating these different colors with different combinations of instruments. But it's written down like this. So everybody's playing with the beat, but they may be playing different things. But orchestration has this, it's like going to an art museum and saying, whoa, I didn't know you could do that with color, because I never did it.
It's like me looking at the Matrix.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's so, it becomes second nature to the composer. It's just, but you've got to understand that the system, the notation system, it's just a language. It's just symbols for different sounds and the value of how long that sound lasts. So music is really pitch, high, low. It is duration. How long does it last? How short, how long? There's a lot of silence in it. It's very important that they have rests or silence, or that you begin in silence, or maybe you take a pause. And then it's sort of organized. So that's really what music is. And the notation is just a way of scribbling it down. It's just like an alphabet.
I mean, for me, it's code. It's like computer code.
It is code.
It is
but,
code.
Just like if you had to write computer code, you'd like go, oh, I can't do this. But you just learn that language.
Yes, correct. No, like, listen, it was spoken languages. Yeah. You talked about, Turkish, culture, whatever. I mean, imagine you learn a different language, right? It's the same. You got to learn the whole thing, and it's the same thing. I mean, for you, it's you just see it, and you can read the whole thing. You can see the whole. You can hear it in your mind, literally playing. Right? That's the level that you get. Now, did you actually study music like from early on, or that was something that you picked up on your own and then advanced to it later on?
So I studied piano all the way through college. And when I was in college, they always thought that performers should always compose and composers should always perform. So they were very strict about that. So I had to go to a composition class. And the class they handed out some paper and they said, pick 2 people in this class and go and write a piece for them. And I said, well, aren't you going to teach us how to do this? They go, no, you've played the piano for 10 years, figure it out. So my first piece was for oboe and French horn. And I really thought this was really stupid. I just thought really stupid. All good music had already been written. Why are they bothering me? So I wrote it. It was not a very good piece. But I was really interested. And so by the time I got to the end of the semester, it's something I really wanted to do because it meant that I could have my own voice. I could speak. I could be the one creating the words rather than reading it or playing somebody else's words. And I think also because I always wanted to compose about my life, but I didn't want anybody to know about that. So it's very secretive. You can write all sorts of things in music and people don't know what you're saying, except I like it or I don't like it.
Well, so. That's amazing though, because I love what you said that I wanted to compose about my life. I mean, so basically people can write a book, which you did, but you can literally translate that book into notes and compose a whole, I guess, melody about it. Or is that did I get it right? Melody will be
yeah. I mean, I'm always writing about where I am right now, and I don't think that's narcissistic. It's just that if I can speak my truth in music, I really believe that when the listener hears it, it's not that they know me, but maybe they'll know themselves a little bit better. Maybe something in what I am playing will resonate with them. And they'll go, oh, that tells me something about myself. That is always my hope, that if I share myself as authentically as I can, other people will understand themselves better. You know how you are when you listen to music and you go, oh, that is just, that means so much to me.
It speaks to you. That's right.
Right. And it's not that that singer or that performer has told you what they are, but you understand, you go, oh, I feel myself. And I think that's where the power of art lives, is that we understand ourselves better. When you go to a jazz concert or hip hop or any of those mediums, or to the art museum or to the county fair, we get a bigger understanding of ourselves. And I think that's very important.
Music really plays on our emotions. You can be, it can make you sad, it can make you happy. I mean, the movies, we're talking, I get the example of movies, that's a lot of composition there. It really, the scores are what drives even the art movies, right? They get you from the music and the sound, and like all of a sudden, like you get these squeaks and you get this you know percussion type of of noise, whatever. You got different things, right? And you have, like, the movies where you can start literally tearing off by just simply listening to music. I mean, it can get you to that level.
I think because it's nonverbal as well, it may touch a different part of your brain. I know that people who have lost the ability to speak sometimes can learn to speak by remembering a melody. So a very sad story in my life was that my niece, when she was 16, she got a brain tumor, and when she was 18, she died. And I came up and stayed with the family. I was there for about 5 weeks, and because of her tumor, she could no longer talk, but she could sing and sing the lyrics of "She Loved Wicked." So I think that really talks about that music is in a different part of your brain. And I think it gives you, it's very sensual and it doesn't have words. So you can't say, oh, this means that. It's more of a feeling. So
yeah, it's really, it plays on emotions. I mean, even it just I mean, and there's so much variety of it that you can use it for different purposes. I mean, we use it for gym, we use it for work, for relaxation, for meditation. You use it for just, for I guess romantic stuff. You can use it for happy occasions. I mean, it's everything. I mean, I think everything around us has some. Nature has music playing every day.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally can listen to the sounds of nature, and it's a melody playing. I mean, you go by the sea, it's got its own sounds, by the water, rivers, the winds. I mean, there's sounds around us, and people actually capturing that and using it in composition. I mean, I've seen some of those things where it's really natural, composition just being remastered, I guess, in a studio. It's amazing stuff. Now, question, Tina: a lot of composers typically have idols of them or role models of theirs, and or someone who influenced their style. Is there such a thing for you, Tina?
When I was younger, I would read a lot of biographies, like 10 or 11. I always liked the ones about women the best. Clara Barton, who was the first nurse, I think it was Molly Pitcher, who went out during the Revolutionary War and gave the soldiers water, Joan of Arc. In music,
those are important, the ones you mentioned. I mean, they're role models, they're leaders.
I think as a woman, my field is really hard on women. All of classical music, there aren't any women. And in fact, they're white guys who are Christian, Germans. It's a very upper crust kind of art form where they were, I wouldn't say wealthy, but they were wealthy enough to be able to play music. But when you think of classical music, it's really traditionally a male Christian, they're white guys. And where do women fit in? And so the music world, the classical music world, is much better now about women composers, and certainly composers, African American composers, and willing to allow those composers to speak in what they feel is their authentic voice, where it isn't necessarily, it's different, it's more influenced by jazz or world music. So I think as a young woman growing up to be a composer, I never played any music by a woman composer when I was up until college. I didn't know that women could compose music. It never occurred to me. So I think it was harder for me to find a role model.
Some good historic ones.
Yes, I think the people that I really loved in the music field were actually more of the experimental composers, because they were thinking outside of the box. They were doing more improvisation. They were more interested in sort of breaking down some of the old forms. So I'm thinking of Pauline Oliveras, who is a wonderful experimental composer. Yeah, probably her. Yeah. Finding, I think you have to find people that really speak to you, not only the music, but who they are in life as well. And that helps a young artist develop. I had a wonderful student today teaching composition. He's in college. And he said, I really get into my head when I'm writing music. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, I don't come from a classical tradition. I come from, more of a rock and roll or, more casual. And he said, so I sometimes think I can't do it. And I said, that's why you have me as a teacher, because I will say to you, you can do it. I don't care what your background is. I am here to say yes. Yes, you're doing a good job. Here, I'm getting a little confused. What do you think you could do with that? Make it a little bit better or clarify your idea. I said, but of course you don't, you're not sure about your talent. And that's why I'm here, to make sure that you know that you can do this.
It's funny. I'm listening to you. Something came to my mind. There's a song, Amadeus.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like a rock version of Amadeus that was like in the 80s. So it's kind of like, you can probably play on it, in a new way and adapt to something new and make it,
Yes.
you can still hear the old Amadeus, beat and melody, but it's a very like, more club music style with,
actually Mozart was kind of a rock musician.
there you go.
He would sit down and just like, oh, let me write this. And people would go, oh my God.
But yeah, but literally, I mean, his music is amazing. But this dude that I forgot his name now, the actual more contemporary one that actually did it, I think the 80s he was German, I think too.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a spin on the original Amadeus. But it became but it was like real like upbeat, and you can really go to it. And it made a hit, so
Mm-hmm.
you talking about your student, you can do that just because maybe that flavor you have, you can adapt to it and give a new, as you said, you guys are classical contemporary, so you can throw in stuff. Now, you said something very powerful, that you didn't grow up to have any role model in the classical sense of music.
Mm-hmm.
But you are today the legacy of the next generation. So now people can actually look up to you as one of the master, women composers of today's age. And your name is going to be branded for life, because people now are going to use your composition and your style in the next, in the courses and stuff. I mean, I wanted to read something, but I can't see it here. There was something that I read earlier on your website about where is it? I'm trying to look. but there's some nice little quotes about your work, out there, and those are powerful. So I'll try to put them on the description of the show so people can actually read about them. But you are being looked at as an expert at what you do, and a phenomenon in terms of the new contemporary music. And that's actually beautiful to know that there is a signature that you're put in today. As a matter of fact, I had the show yesterday. We talked about being unique, having your own signature, and you are doing that now. You are the new Mozart.
Right. And what I would love to do and continue to do with composers is, again, I get back to this. I want to say yes. Write your music, teach yourself, look at, once your music is written, take a look at it, ask yourself a question. What did I do good? What really worked? What do I wish I had done better? So I don't want to be the critical voice. I want to support my composers to be have their own critical thinking, which is, what did I do well? What could I do better? And how can I move on to the next piece? No piece is that precious that you have to keep on changing it to make it perfect. I don't believe in perfection anyway. You do the best you can and then move on and write the next piece and do the best you can. Learn from it, write on, just so it's this progression. And I guess if I want to be a role model, I love writing music. I just think it's wonderful. And I would want everybody to write music. And I think it makes you a better person. Every once in a while, I think of a politician that I don't care for, and I go, oh, if he had studied composition, he might be a better person. Maybe.
But so, Tina, you wrote music, you are writing music. What is your best piece today that you can claim?
Oh, wow.
And is it used in any orchestra today that people can really? I know I've seen some of the videos on YouTube and stuff, so there's some good stuff there. But
I really like a piece called "It Is My Heart Singing." That's for piano and string quartet. I have a new piece called Leap, L-E-A-P, and I wrote that during COVID. And I was writing about how when everything was shut down, the old way is gone and you kind of have to leap into the new way. And when you leap, sometimes you don't know where you're going. It's that leap of faith. Right. So I was writing about that sense of, the world had kind of tipped and was kind of crazy, but in a very quiet way. Nobody was outside. We were all, but everything was sort of distorted and different. I like that piece. That's going to be recorded this year by another group. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, we will search, and make sure we get some of that stuff. And now your music is out there. I mean, people can purchase some of this stuff
on Spotify. Yeah, Spotify or Apple Music.
Right. So definitely we're going to have to.
And you can go to Amazon and buy my book, Let Your Heart Be Broken.
So we're going to talk about that, now where we can get there. But New York Times praised you, vivid ear for harmony and colors. That's one of the quotes. And there's some more stuff out there about your special gifts to the music, and the classic music, if you want to call it that way. So, now the book is available, as you said, only Amazon, right? That's where
Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. You can
wherever the books are sold. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I will definitely have the link to it so people can actually do access it. And it's not just about music. I think it's a whole thing with you. It's the story. It's all your life story basically is in there, and all the tips for people to enjoy themselves and have a better life, learning from the stuff.
It's also a lot about my composing process. what I'm thinking about when I write a piece of music. So it's short stories. So they're every other chapter is a short story about my life, 5 to 6 pages. And then the in-between chapters are actually journals that I wrote during this decade of time. And the journals are about my life as an adult, but also about how I'm composing, and what I'm thinking about when I'm writing music. So I think it articulates a little bit of what I go through as I write music, what I'm thinking about. A lot of times I'm writing about, like, I'm blocked and I don't know, like I'm supposed to be writing this piece, but I can't do it. Sometimes I write about that. But it's really about my life as a composer. And then you go back to my childhood. The third chapter is about my childhood, and the fourth chapter is. So I think it works really well. People say it's it kind of reads like a thriller, that they can't put it down. They're like, what's going to happen next?
Well, it is a thrill, and it is a real, and it is a real story that people can actually, well, a life story, literally from you to now, talking about everything you've dealt with, as well as your creativity and how you do your music, right? Now, a quick question, just for out of curiosity, how long does a piece take to actually write? I mean, we know for writers, it's the same thing. You got to be creative, and you start that blank page, and you stare at it, and then you start typing, and then erase and type.
Right.
So does that also work for music composition?
Yeah, I would say that a 15-minute piece might take me. It depends upon what the orchestration is. If it's a 15-minute piece, it might take me 3 or 4 months to write. If it's an orchestra piece, it might take me 6 months to write a 15-minute piece. And then I have some operas, and they take about a year to write. And then you put them aside, and then you have to rewrite them. And so it does take time. And especially, I write a lot of notes. A lot of my music is pretty fast. A lot of notes, yeah.
Well, again, I mean, but that's impressive. I mean, I was thinking more like in terms of hours. You're talking in terms of months, or years, literally. So it is not something that. Yeah. But as you said, it is art.
Well, and it's not writing 8 hours a day. You can only write a certain amount. Maybe some days it's a good day is 3 hours of writing. Some days it's 5 minutes. You
blank out.
Yep. And you just have to live with that 5 minutes and go to sleep and wake up the next day.
Yeah, listen, you refresh, and sometimes, did you ever get those moments at night where it's like it happens and you just get up?
I do have those moments when I'm really intensely composing a piece. I will in my dreams, I will hear my music like inch by inch, line by second by second, and it's so annoying. It's like slow motion music, and I'll wake up and I'll go, "You've got to give me a break here. I'm sleeping. Go away."
Do you actually go up and really all of that, just take it and put it on the note?
I usually, when I wake up and I'm going through this piece, like through slow motion, like note by note by note, I just wake up and I say, "Go back to the studio where you belong. Let me sleep, please." But I think, when you're doing something in a very concentrated way, of course it's gonna affect your sleep. Yeah.
Now, when you are composing music, do you actually, literally, I'm not in the sleep state. I'm talking about really right now in front of your writing piece. And do you actually, you talked about how it's all kind of synchronized between the instruments and the type of sounds, right? Do you actually hear all those pieces together when you're actually playing, or not playing, but writing? Because somehow it's got to be like you're listening to it at the same time. I don't know.
Well, I've been doing this for 50 years. So I've collected, I have some good sound banks in my ear, So yes, I do know what the sound is if you put a violin with a flute or if you put the violin with a clarinet. I have those sounds in my memory that I can sort of check with. Sometimes when I hear a performance of something, I'll go, oh, that's kind of different than I thought it was going to be. Maybe the sound is a little bit different, or generally it's not a surprise, but occasionally it is a surprise. And I go, oh, good, I've learned something. Oh, cool.
So what advice would you give to young, composers today for classical, I guess, contemporary classical, if you want to call it that way?
Well, first of all, who you study with, make sure they're not saying no to you in some way. If you're in a school that you feel like they're not being positive about you being a composer, find a different school. I think the biggest advice that I got was not to go to graduate school, but to go and create your own group or find your own performers, write music, have them perform it, just write and write. And the experience of hearing your music teaches you so much about what you should do next. And write for your friends, write for a community orchestra. Don't wait for that big, Carnegie Hall experience. Just write for anybody who will play your music, and just write and write and write. And I think that was the best advice I ever got in school, is just keep on writing. But and a lot of contemporary composers, particularly in the 70s, the orchestras weren't going to play their music. And we're talking about Philip Glass and Steve Reich. They just created their own bands and wrote for their own bands. And then they started booking their own concerts. And that's how they became really well known. So if somebody won't play your music, create your own group.
I would say the same. If you can get an opportunity from somewhere, create the opportunity yourself. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, so don't think high, think what's around you.
Mm-hmm. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Don't worry about those big, flashy experiences. Find the small ones and keep on building.
But you're right. I mean, again, your music is only as good as the play, right? And if you get a good band,
experience that you have.
Yeah.
So you're going to grow on experience. So get that experience.
That's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Everything we do. But the idea is, if you have a good band, well, I guess you refer to them as an orchestra,
or your ensemble, whatever it is.
Yeah. So you get a bunch of great, players, and they love music, and then you compose and you get the next big hit. That's it. Yeah. I mean, that's as simple as now you can even get discovered through a lot of different ways, and have your own. I mean, you can create your own channel for music.
Well, now people are self-publishing.
Oh, listen, I have music studios friends that have studios, and they always welcome people to come on, and they'll help them digitize and do all the stuff. So it's amazing that now we have the tech, we have the abilities to do more than what you had in the past. Right. Now, so this is going to be an off question. What is just your take on today's music period? Not classical, but just music.
Well, I have a lot of kids who come in and they want to play the music they're listening to it. I love it. I'll just go, I say, okay, what do you want to play? Well, one of them came in, it's the piece is Clocks by Coldplay. And so we just go through YouTube, and I said, well, you play the piano, so let's find the music and let's learn it. So I really love all types of music. And as a teacher, I don't really care what you're playing, as long as you love it. And it inspires you and you feel connected to it. So I think I'm more interested in the composers who are pushing the boundaries of sound and of music than maybe more, pop music is pretty stylized. It, it has a form, and, I think it's very driven by amazing artists who give that sort of form new meaning, rather than the form itself changing, but how they form that music. And pop music is also so much about the visual as well as the music. It has so many different aspects to it. But I'm always interested. I'm interested in a lot of crossover music, so like crossover folk or crossover jazz. Jazz that's performed in more classical venues. That's always interesting to me. Music that's pushing boundaries.
Thank you, Tina. So question: would you recommend, for example, someone who's composing music to maybe also with the, I guess, the ever growing networks and like movie networks, like, or even like certain platforms such as Netflix and things like that. I mean, they do have produced their own shows and things like that, like writing scores for movies, documentaries and stuff. Do you think that is something that could be a good route for someone to, I guess, to share their music and stuff?
It's a very hard business to get into. It's a very, very hard music. I'm not so interested in that, because when you write music for a show, it sort of is used by the show to illustrate the show rather than to be on its own at speaking for the composer. So it's kind of utilitarian. Also, you may write something and they'll just take this little bit of it. So you don't have a lot of artistic freedom. It's really
spoken as an artist.
And I've written music for some like PBS shows. And basically what I do is I just write the piece of music and I say, here it is, use it any way you want to. And especially if it's recorded in tracks, then they could maybe take, this track and use it, or they take a little piece of it and then they'll take that track. But then they're free to use it. And then I've said, well, why don't you let me listen to it? And so they kind of use this sort of theme again and again. And I said, that's kind of boring. Why don't you? It's like, oh, okay. So,
it's amazing, because you are the artist, you are the composer, it's your baby, and then you see somebody else using it or like chopping it up. It's painful, I guess. It's like,
and
it's like
somebody
an artist,
like John, somebody like John Williams, he has so much credibility and so much, years and years and years in the industry. So they're going to be much more careful what they chop out of his. He has a lot more clout, in other words. So I don't know much about the field. I don't know too much about it. I just heard that a friend of mine's son what is he writing music for? I've forgotten what he's writing music. And it's a hard business to crack. It's a very hard business. So
not on a recommendation top 10, right?
I don't know enough about it.
No, that's fair. It's fair. Well, again, but you give in an honest opinion, but I hear you. And I even feel the energy behind it, because this is like your work, your piece of art, and you do not want someone. It's amazing, right? You put this whole show together, this whole thing, and someone comes in and says, like, why did you do this? Why did you?
Right. Maybe, you got this whole piece. Well, just take this much.
Yeah. like that kind of almost hurts, right? It hurts your feelings. Right? But that's like, somebody's going and criticizing the Mona Lisa and say, like,
yeah,
why is she not blonde? Imagine that someone comes in and asks that question. That would be like, like almost hurting the feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same concept. You are putting a piece of work that is unique, that has, you talk the time that it takes to actually write something and compose something.
Well, but I want to be careful that, the people who write for movies, they're very, very skilled. They're very good composers. I don't think they have, first of all, it's music for hire. I don't write music for hire. People commission me and they'll say, would you write a certain amount of time for this string quartet? Let's say 15 minutes. They might say, we're going to present it for this occasion. But then it's I just write a piece of music and they play it. Film is really different. A lot of times you'll be composing the music while you're watching the film.
You need to
so
integrate the scenes.
Yes. So it's a really different genre. There's some amazing composers for films, but it's just different. It's really a whole different thing.
I hear you. I appreciate, and
they're great
feedback.
Schools that will teach you so much about how to write film music. And again, when you write it, when you have something performed, it has an elasticity to it, because maybe the performers will take it slower, or maybe they'll have a pause here. But with film music, it is exact. It has to go exactly with the film. And so there's not a lot of flexibility.
So I have a question. Music is international. It's a world language, right? Mm-hmm. Now, for someone that's watching or listening in the US, it might be limiting themselves maybe to just the US, but you can certainly compose worldwide. And your piece can be probably even more prominent somewhere else, because they'll see a different use for it there, and maybe that's an opportunity that people should know about, that, hey, why are you limiting yourself? Because it's not English, it's really music that can be played regardless. You just need, a bunch of good people that love instruments, and they can make the instruments really sound right. And you can get those anywhere in the world. I mean, there's some orchestras almost in every country in the world, if not every inch of the country in the world. So what do you say about that?
I think it's a great way, and certainly bands, they tour, they go over and they tour. I think it's a little harder sometimes to get your music abroad, because they're doing their own music. So sometimes also classical music, it's a very small world. People really know each other. So
you're expanding on that.
Well, you might not know a group in Europe quite as well as you would know a group in the United States. So since it's a small field, and people, a lot of times they hear about your work from somebody else who's played it. So it's kind of word of mouth. It's not as big a field as you would think. So I think it is a wonderful thing to play music from other countries, other contemporary music, and to share your work with others. Yeah.
So Tina, just out of curiosity, if let's say I were your student right now, I will basically, let's say I write my first piece, right? I mean, ideally, the way I understand it now is that I find a band to play my music, and that's kind of like my demo. And then I can expose that to the world. And then ultimately at that point, people can hear, what I can write. And then they like my style. It's like reading, a novel versus a different type of book, right? They love my formula, my just, I guess, the melody, whatever, my sweetness, I could say, right? My emotions. And then if they hear that, then they might be like, oh, we want you to write for us. We want you to write this piece for us.
Right.
So that's really something.
The opportunities now by YouTube and digital sharing. It's funny now in classical music, not in orchestras, but if you go to just a concert of a string quartet or they're using iPads now for the music and not sheet music. That in terms of my music, it really makes a big difference, because a lot of times I'll write a piece of music, and because it's very rhythmic and all the instruments are playing, sometimes I have to adjust the music for page turns, because you physically have to stop playing your instrument and turn the page. But now with an iPad, you just have to click your foot, so you don't have to worry about where the page turned. It makes a big difference. It's so interesting how the difference in how the form, so on an old LP, you had the first side and you had the second side. When you created an LP, you would think about the last piece on the first side. You would want it exciting enough that people would flip it over. Now you don't have to worry about that. There's no, it's all one thing. But before, you actually had to strategize what will make it for sure that people will want to flip the LP over and play the other side. And you'd have to sort of think about the dynamics, the energy of that.
That's a lot of work.
You don't have to do that anymore. It's really a big change.
Well, I mean, again, you're talking about adapting to technology and how it benefits. And I know there are people that are just creative enough to think like what an industry needs and how can we improve, the ability of like make it more efficient and effective, right? So right. That's the thing that's happening. Well, listen, Tina, I think we've exceeded our hour, but it was all, fun stuff. I've learned quite a bit. It was completely
thank you so much.
Interesting, stuff and a discussion. We've talked about motivation, inspiration. We talked about, advice. We talked about music. We've learned a little bit about composition and how it plays and how it works, how to promote it. So we've touched on a lot, and we certainly touched about your book. And so now, do you have any other books, or that's just the one book?
That's my first book. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I want to just congratulate you for the book and definitely for all the work you've done. And I know you're going to do some more work out there. And this is one of many.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Much. Appreciate you being with us here. And folks, I just really hope that this was I told you, an interesting show. It is an interesting show, definitely a new angle. And we've learned quite a bit, but we've talked about health, we've talked about mental health, we've talked about society, lifestyles, and everything here. And it's just plenty to take home with us. And so, yeah, we'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic, new guest. I'm Hurricane H. See you soon. Bye-bye.